Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Nature's Reality YouTube channel. Today we're here to talk about undoubtedly the most feared and infamous crocodilian of all time, Gustave, the killer crocodile of Burundi. Burundi is a small East Central African nation, bordered to the north by Rwanda and located in between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Tanzania. Like many other African nations, Burundi is home to the Nile crocodile, which happens to be the second largest extant reptilian in the entire world, second only to the saltwater crocodile. Nile crocodiles grow to an average length of anywhere from 10 to 15 feet and can weigh upwards of 1,500 pounds. With this sheer size and power, it is no surprise that Nile crocodiles pose a very real threat to the people that live around the waters in which they inhabit. This video of a Nile crocodile taking down an impala only goes to show you how strong they really are. Nile crocodiles also happen to have the strongest bite in the entire animal kingdom, with a bite force of around 5,000 pounds per square inch. Sadly, a vast majority of the nations in which Nile crocodiles inhabit are some of the most poverty-stricken nations in the entire world, meaning that within these nations that Nile crocodiles inhabit, a lot of people rely on waterways for survival, waterways that are full of Nile crocodiles. And so obviously, the more people that there are venturing into these Nile crocodile-infested waterways, the more people that are encountering them and potentially being attacked by them. Now that you know a bit about the nation of Burundi and the Nile crocodile, let us begin on the story of Gustave. While it isn't unheard of to hear stories about crocodiles attacking people, it is rare to hear stories of a single crocodile, or any animal for that matter, that intentionally hunts humans. And this is why the story of Gustave has become so infamous, as Gustave is said to be responsible for the deaths of over 300 people. A kill count of over 300 is simply absurd for any animal, and just talking about it, just the mere thought of it is unsettling. And so one can only imagine the amount of fear Gustave must have inflicted upon those who shared the same waterways as him. The Ruzizi River is a decently lengthy river, stretching roughly 120 kilometers. The Ruzizi River was also once home to flourishing populations of elephants, buffaloes, wildebeests, and warthogs. However, as time went on, populations of these animals along the Ruzizi River were slowly hunted to extinction, leaving behind a lot less ecological sustainability and biodiversity. Today you will primarily find hippopotamuses and Nile crocodiles living within the Ruzizi River, two of Africa's most dangerous inhabitants. Now you may be thinking, what is so important about this Ruzizi River? Well, the Ruzizi River is the waterway which Gustave called home. The first reported attacks by Gustave come from around 1987. However, some argue that his reign of terror began even earlier than that. One of the first known victims of Gustave is a fisherman, who, while going to retrieve his fishing line, was dragged underwater by a massive crocodile, never to be seen again. Another one of Gustave's earlier victims was a boy who was attacked while doing laundry in the river with his mother. Gustave is said to have lunged out of the water and grabbed the boy, dragging him under. Later, all that was found of the boy was his dismembered remains. Attacks like these by Gustave persisted all throughout the late 80s, through the 90s, and into the early 2000s. It was also during these times that Burundi was experiencing a harsh civil war, a war that had resulted in the deaths of thousands of people. It is also said that the bodies of those who lost their lives fighting in the war would often be dumped into the Ruzizi River, where they would then decompose and be feasted upon by Nile crocodiles. This particular happening is what some people theorize led to Gustave's desire for human flesh. However, I think that is just something people say to fuel his legend and make him more terrifying than he already is. Because, as I will explain to you shortly, I believe that there is a different reason behind why Gustave targeted, attacked, and consumed people. And while I think that it is definitely more than possible that he was one of the crocodiles that did feast upon those decomposing bodies, I do not see it as being the sole reasoning behind why he went after people. Now, the thing that frightened most people about Gustave was his unreal size. While an exact measurement was never taken of him, due to the fact that he was never properly captured and studied, estimates had Gustave at a length of anywhere from 18 to 25 feet and a weight of over 2,000 pounds. And so if Gustave really was in fact over around 21 feet in length, then he would become the largest Nile crocodile ever known to man. And while I do not think that Gustave was as big as some estimates put him at, like 25 feet, I still believe that it is more than possible that he was in fact the largest now crocodile of all time. And when I say of all time, I'm talking about the crocodiles that we know of, because I'm sure that there has been larger crocodiles, but we've just never discovered them. Gustave was simply massive, and as a result of his preposterous size, some people estimated that he was over 100 years old. But it was very unlikely that Gustave was really 100 years old due to the fact that he still had all of his teeth. Since crocodiles that would be around 100 years old are said to no longer be able to regrow their teeth because crocodiles can only regrow their teeth a certain number of times. And while I do say a certain number of times, that certain number of times is really high, around 50 times. So it is rare to find a crocodile that is no longer able of regrowing its teeth because that crocodile would have to be really old. And due to the fact that Gustave still had all of his teeth, it's likely that he was still growing during the peak of his reign of terror, meaning that he was only going to get larger and larger. While it may seem advantageous for a crocodile to continue growing throughout its entire life, it can actually be quite the disadvantage. This is because the larger that an organism, or a crocodilian is, the more food that is required to survive and keep up with its energy levels. And while you may think that, oh well, if the crocodile is larger, doesn't that just mean that it's larger and stronger and more capable of taking down large prey? Granted that the larger a crocodile is, the stronger it is, several other hunting attributes that are arguably more important than the strength of the crocodile, all decrease in effectiveness as a crocodile increases in size. And so, due to the fact that the crocodile is no longer as skillful at hunting, it will search for easier food sources. And sadly, in the case of Gustave, that easy and readily available food source was humans. Humans are incredibly vulnerable in the water, and with such a high concentration of them living along the Ruzizi River, it's really no surprise that Gustave turned to consuming people. Gustave is also said to have frequently attacked livestock and pets. Gustave is also said to have killed people and not eaten them, as remains of his victims would often be found dismembered but uneaten. A possible explanation for this was that Gustave was a selective eater. He eventually got so good at hunting people that he had an overabundance of food and only ate when he needed to. So I believe that Gustave would occasionally store his prey underwater like crocodilians are known to do, and sometimes these bodies would wash up, and that's what people would find, the dismembered but uneaten remains that Gustave had intended to come back to later. Another possible and extremely unsettling explanation for these dismembered remains is that people would dump bodies into the Ruzizi River and blame it on Gustave. Essentially, people committing horrible crimes would use Gustave as their scapegoat. As I stated previously, reported attacks made by Gustave persisted all throughout the late 80s until the early 2000s. You may be thinking, if Gustave had become such a legend within Burundi, why weren't there more efforts put forth to study and capture him during his rather lengthy reign of terror? Well, the thing is that it was incredibly hard for any researchers or scientists to go to Burundi to do any research due to all the political unrest and civil warfare that made the country unsafe. Unfortunately, very little wildlife research occurred within Burundi during these times. In terms of efforts put forth to kill Gustave, there were always people trying to kill him. However, killing Gustave was also a task said not to be very easy at all. Gustave's skin was allegedly too thick to even pierce with ammunition, which may seem crazy, but it isn't even that unreasonable, as an animal of his size is bound to have incredibly thick skin. And as most of you should already know, crocodilians already have incredibly thick skin as it is. Gustave is also said to have had a body that was riddled with scars and other bodily injuries due to all the attempts people had made on his life. Some of his most notable injuries are a bullet wound atop the head and a deep wound on his shoulder. And as you can imagine, all of these injuries only further handicapped Gustave, which made him less able to go after his typical prey, and supposedly only further motivated him to go after humans. And I should also mention that the only thing that was said to spook Gustave was a literal blast from a grenade. And yes, I know that's a geyser, I just thought the picture was cool. I know that I just told you all about how Gustave wasn't as able when it came to hunting, which is why he sought out easier prey. But Gustave is also rumored to have taken out a fully grown hippopotamus, which is something that he was probably only capable of doing due to the fact that he was massive. As taking out an adult hippopotamus is an incredibly difficult and near impossible task for just about any crocodile, even the largest of them, as fully grown hippos are simply just larger and a lot more powerful than practically all now crocodiles. Now, crocodiles will typically go after young hippos if they are hunting hippos, but even that is an incredibly dangerous task as the mother of the baby hippo is often lurking nearby and will, without hesitation, kill whatever crocodile crosses her or her baby's path. The fact that Gustave was at one point able to take down a fully grown hippopotamus just goes to show you how powerful and how dangerous he really was. Not many legitimate or well-organized operations were ever put into place to capture Gustave, due to how dysfunctional the government of Burundi had been. That was until around 2002, when French herpetologist Patrice Fay sought out to capture Gustave and keep him in an enclosure to be studied. All of which was documented by the 2004 documentary Capturing the Killer Croc. Patrice Fay had studied the legend of Gustave throughout his career and was extremely interested in studying him. I've watched this particular documentary myself, and while they do find and spot Gustave, they never really come close to capturing him or studying him very well at all. Patrice Fay and his crew ultimately had to leave after 2 months of attempting to capture Gustave due to the fact that the local government could no longer ensure him and his crew's safety. Patrice Fay would continue to put out efforts to capture Gustave during the rest of his career, however, he was never successful in capturing the beast. Gustave's reign of terror persisted for about 5 years after the documentary until around 2009, when the last confirmed sighting of Gustave occurred. Over time, the number of sightings and reports of Gustave steadily decreased. He was allegedly sighted in 2015 with a buffalo carcass, however I find that sighting to be questionable and he was likely last spotted in 2009. In the end, Gustave was never confirmed to be captured or killed by anyone. And in all the myth and legends surrounding him, we never really got a good chance to study him. We truly know so little about him. Even his size is all but speculation. Gustave likely died of some natural causes, because at some point even a diet of humans isn't enough to sustain a giant crocodile. And Gustave likely got to an age where he was no longer able to regrow his teeth, and without teeth it became incredibly difficult for him to capture anything, which all helped to lead to his inevitable demise. In my opinion, Gustave was simply an absolute monster. His sheer size, despite never being properly measured, was undoubtedly gargantuan and near record-shattering. I also don't doubt the fact that he was a man-eater, despite all the sketchy documentation of him, but I believe the number of people he killed, or his kill count, was greatly exaggerated. There was just so much fueling the legend of Gustave that any attack made by a crocodile on a human, likely within the entirety of the Ruzizi River, was attributed to Gustave just because of how notorious he had become. So basically, while I do not doubt that Gustave was a man-eater at all, I'm rather certain about it just because there's so many documented cases of him doing such a thing and all the factors pointing as to why he would switch to a diet of humans. I just don't think that his kill count is as high as some people say it is. That wraps up the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you clicking on this video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you would like to see more content from this page. Feel free to leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section because I always really appreciate that. However the feedback is, any feedback is great feedback. I just love hearing it. Your guys' support is always appreciated, and just really thank you so much for clicking on this video. I'm sorry for how long it took me to put out this video, this little short documentary here, because I've been hyping it up for so long. I hope it lived up to some of your guys' expectations. I would say that it's better than the first video I've created. However, there's still a lot of things I'd like to improve on for my next. And yeah, I would just like to say that this whole video editing stuff is rather new to me, and I'm just trying to make enjoyable and informative content for all of you guys. And so yeah, just obviously, like I said, let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. And if you don't already, be sure to follow the Instagram page at natures.reality on Instagram, because that is where I post the majority of my content. Basically all my content is on there. But yeah, I'd like to definitely post more on YouTube and put more content out on here on a more consistent basis. Links to all of the Instagram pages, and if you want to check out the documentary on Gustave, the Capturing the Killer Croc, I'll also put the link for that down in the description box below. So yeah, just make sure to check that out because that's where everything will be. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you have a great day, and I'll try to post something very soon. Goodbye.